It's very rare that I feel like a short game feels satisfying. Even if it's just a Game Pass game, I want my time to be used for things that aren't going to feel like a waste of time. And that tends to happen a lot. But with Hi-Fi Rush, it toes the line between feeling complete and leaving the player wanting more. Weird that it started the trend of weirdly horny rectangular robots, but let's talk about it. Not the robots, but like the game itself. Action games like this are always interesting to me, but the two that came to mind when playing this were Metal Gear Revengeance and DMC5. Metal Gear definitely left me wanting more by the end in a good way, while DMC5 left me feeling like, oh, that's it. Not to say I didn't enjoy the gameplay, but the structure of that game just wasn't what I was looking for. But we're here for Hi-Fi Rush, a game that I was initially hesitant about because I heard it was a rhythm game, and it definitely is, but I thought it would be constrictive and force you to play a certain way through the most quick-time events you've ever seen. Hi-Fi isn't actually like that though. Realistically, if you want to play the game without being in sync with the music, even once, you can do that. I wouldn't say you should do that, but you can, which I think makes this game way more dynamic and turns it into a fight between the game and you and yourself. The absolute best way to play the game is when every hit of your guitar connects with the beat in one of the many mini-robots' heads. In other games, it's just a cool coincidence when that happens, but this is how you're actually supposed to play this game. Everything is designed around the idea that every fight should have the same intensity as a boss fight, and while I think it does take a bit for that to happen, at least it did for me, once it does, it's some of the most fun I've had in a while. Between the types of combos you can string together, even though I only use like 4 because I'm a very simple man, dashing across the screen, using your go-go gadget magnetic arm to zoom towards enemies, or just spamming assist moves can make the screen, as you can see, pretty chaotic. You could do what the game would want you to do and concentrate and feel the beat to be able to fight and connect with Chai on his journey of self-discovery, combining the gameplay with the story in a way that most games have a cognitive dissonance with, or you could continue to spam buttons until all the robots on screen go boom. It's up to you. There's upgrades that you can equip to make certain numbers go up and others go down, but after that mechanic was introduced, I touched it like one more time because I forgot about it, and then never again. I do think that they give you more than enough gears to buy whatever you want in a single playthrough, and I love that you can sell combos and other things that you don't use anymore to recoup some gears too. Great system. My only real complaints for the gameplay department are that the jumping for the platforming is a little floaty for me, but once you get into like the third level, you get used to it. And the other thing isn't the developers or the game's fault, but since it happened enough times for me to notice, I think I should bring it up. Since I played this on PC, I had to deal with things that only my PC would do. I had 2 types of input lag. The first is my fault, because I think my controller's a little busted. So when the batteries get low, instead of it just disconnecting like a normal one, it will horribly lag whatever game I'm playing until I take them out. It's not on this game, and anytime that happened, I knew it was on me. The second way would happen when I know I would be on beat because I'm hitting the X button with the exact same cadence, and only some of the hits actually register as being on beat. I think this is also a controller issue on my part as well, and I'm not just saying, oh, the game is wrong, I was actually on beat every time, because I know I was not. But for a rhythm game, button registration is probably the most important thing, and making sure that it's timed correctly is the difference between high and low scores. I think the game actually compensates for that pretty well and gives a decent level of give, at least on the normal difficulty. But just FYI, if your controller is a little finicky or broken, it's not a deal breaker, just maybe don't jump into the harder difficulties. For the levels themselves, I like them a lot. There's a surprising amount of variety for the location being essentially just an industrial park. And don't get me wrong, there's still a bunch of girders, OSHA violations, and miserable workers around, but when a lot of the levels have miscellaneous hallways that you just have to walk through, the game does a good job of having different interesting set piece locations like a volcano, a museum, and a moving platform train thingy. But action games to me always live and die by their boss fights, and I think the game does a good job of ramping them up because I don't think the first few are that interesting, but spoilers for boss fights and stories going forward. Okay, cool. You fight in Scrooge McDuck's vault against a robo-werewolf right after you fight a Parappa the Rapper NPC. And don't get me wrong, not all of the boss fights are as fun as these, but the best thing about them is that they improve greatly on the mechanics that you learn throughout the game, which then culminates in a boss fight that has not only my favorite splash screen I've ever seen, which you can see here, but also just gives me those friendship is our strength type of vibes, which I only allow myself to like once a year. Which leads us into talking more about the story, which is by far the most Saturday morning cartoon that I've ever seen, and that's not a bad thing either. I'm not gonna act like Chai or any of the other cast of characters are particularly special or that interesting, but I don't really think that's the point. Like, I'll be the first to say that Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually has a few characters that are much deeper than they have any reason to be, but with Corsica literally just being a scrapped Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist down to the colorful hair, I think it's fine. With the shortness of the game, it feels like, and yes, this will be another Yu-Gi-Oh! Reference, you're going against the Big Five, but at least in Hi-Fi, they made every member actually interesting and memorable rather than generic business person number 208 in fiction. And when I said I don't think that the characters are special, I mean that they obviously fit a stereotype. The hacker girl with a chip on her shoulder, the big guy who's really good at punching but doesn't like violence, the cute mascot character, that type of stuff. But I think this falls into a similar space that Cyberpunk Edgerunners did for me. Review on the way, by the way. Where I think the journey and going through it with the characters is more important than the story itself, actually. Again, if you ever spent a Saturday morning flipping through channels at 10 a.m., you'll know exactly what I mean by it being so much like a cartoon. Now onto the music, since that's like 50% of the game, all things included. I played it with streamer mode off, so I heard all of the songs, but after looking up the OST to find the names of the songs I really liked for this, I found out that they made legally distinct songs that might as well just be covers since the vibes are the exact same. Like, listen to A Million by 9 Inch Nails, the song played during the first boss fight, and Too Big to Fail from the OST. Take your time. Like, I get that they have to have the same type of beat because that's how this game works, but mad songs have the same 4/4 beat and don't have the same vibe like this. Just FYI if this style of music is your bag. And of course, while playing the game, I had flashbacks to Sonic games. I'm not saying that the soundtracks are similar throughout, but there are moments where I think they both capture that same feeling. There's just moments where you stop playing and tap your foot, which for this game in particular is super important since the mechanics revolve around being on beat, and maybe it's just because they're both stories of rebels going against an over-mechanized enemy, which the music reflects, that makes me connect the two. But I feel like if you grinded up SA2 and Heroes together and then ran it through a slowed filter for the beat to be a little bit more pronounced, this is what you would come away with. Like, there's a Fifth Symphony techno mashup in this game, and it fucking bangs. The OST is just good. There's really nothing else to say about it. I do wish there was a little more variety with the genres, but between that song and the Fiona Apple song, maybe I'm just being a little too nitpicky. Finally, let's talk about all the things that I want to talk about that don't really fit anywhere else. I really like that the game lets you talk to the robots around, and that no matter where you are, they won't know who you are and just complain about working. Why were they programmed to have emotions when they're just manual labor robots? Who knows? But I like that they also hide out from their bosses to relax. And speaking of robots, I never figured out why there was a hard-boiled detective bot that was always waxing poetic about things in like weird places. I only saw him a couple times, and it didn't make sense, but I love bro. I also think how easy they make it to be on beat is also really great, with everything in the background bouncing like it was an old-timey cartoon, or the UI bouncing to the beat, or even the dedicated beat tracker all really help to immerse you in the game. The game also does this thing where in certain cutscenes it'll transition from game render to animation, and I just love that so much. I wish more things in general had flourishes like that, and it really does just make it feel more like a cartoon. I think the character naming scheme is a little weird because I thought they were going for like a chowder thing where they're all named after food, like chai, peppermint, and macaron, but then Roxanne and Rekka aren't foods as far as I know, so it's just a little weird that they did it for some characters and not others, but it's not like it matters in the grand scheme of things. And finally, even though I do really like this game, I don't know how I would feel about a sequel. I'm always yelling about how things don't always need sequels, and I kind of feel the same here. Like, the full package is here, and I'm happy to see them updating the game with photo modes and whatever else they've got in the pipeline, but I'm kind of cool if this is all we get from this universe. But let me know what you think. Insert all the other YouTuber stuff I'm supposed to say here, and I'm out.